Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I am very excited about the lecture today because, inshallah, after you learn this material, you will know more about supply and demand than Varian does, and you will know more about it than Manikov and any Harvard professor, actually. So, today we are going to analyze the model which is analyzed by Varian in chapter 1. He starts out by saying correctly that a model is a simplification of reality. So he is going to look at a model, and we are going to look at a model in which there are a ring of apartments. We will assume that these apartments are identical, just to simplify life, and that there are some students who are looking for apartments, and so they have their own incomes or affordability levels, and then the apartments have their prices, and we'll see what happens. And that's what the object of a model is, to try to find out what happens in such a situation. So that is the and so he says that so apartments is located in a ring. If somebody doesn't fails to match a suitable apartment, he will go outside the ring to the peripheral town. So there are two principles, he says, when he starts to analyze that we have to follow. We have to follow the optimization principle and the equilibrium principle. So those are I'm just reminding you, I hope that most of you have read this chapter. If not, you have read an equivalent chapter somewhere else. Oops, this is not what I want. Yeah, this is the lecture. Okay, so Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. So this is what the angels said to Allah Ta'ala, and this is what all of us have to say, that we have no knowledge except that which Allah Ta'ala gives us. And Allah Ta'ala is the source of all knowledge. So now one very important thing to understand about models is that models are in the heart and the mind. Models are an attempt by us to understand a complex reality. So a model which is in the book is not a model, because it doesn't help us to understand anything. And so this is a complete misconception about models that you have been taught. So today I'll try to teach you about models so that you can understand and you can use to understand an even more complicated thing. If a model itself is very complicated, then it is useless, because basically what we are trying to do is we're trying to understand a complex reality, and we are trying to make a simplified model to help us understand. If the model makes it more difficult to understand, then it's useless, and that's what the economist models are. We can directly understand the market for housing. We understand it very well. Being students, you have to, at least hostelites, they have to go and look for housing, and they understand the market. So now a model is a set of ideas about how the market works, and then there are calculations. You see, if you have some ideas, like if you remember the complexity model, here are these birds which are flying together. How do they fly together? We have some ideas that what can a bird do? Well, a bird can try to move closer to the other birds. That will create flocks. If a bird doesn't have this kind of behavior, then all of the birds will be flying in random. So let's put in a rule of behavior that the bird tries to move closer, and then it has to match directions also. So that is the second rule, that the bird tries to match directions to harmonize. With just these two rules, you create flocks. But what happens? Now you see what would happen. Then you have to use the computer. You put in these rules and you put in birds and you make them fly, and then you see what happens. And you see what happens is that they make flocks exactly as you think, but they become very closely clustered together, more than natural. Then you say, oh, you put in a rule of avoidance of nearness, so avoidance of collisions, and that makes it look very much like an animal swarm. So now you see you have created a model. The model is in your mind. The computer simulation is not what is a calculation of the concepts that you have in your mind. Many times the concepts that we have about how things work are give a complicated situation. So to put it down, to see what would happen according to these ideas, you have to use the computer. The computer is a auxiliary. It allows us to make calculations using the models. It's not the model. So there is this Indian mathematician Ramanujan, and he had an intuition. He would write down formulas, and then people would wonder how you can prove this, because they didn't have an. So in the West they believe in proofs, but the real knowledge is that which enters the heart. So we try to get a heart understanding of supply and demand, and we will see that we can do it. It's easy because it's a part of our experience, and it is very different from what the models say, and the results and the consequences, everything is different. So today we will try to really understand what supply and demand is. So first we understand what is Varian methodology. Varian starts by building a model. Says, okay, model must satisfy these two axioms. There have to be optimization, there has to be equilibrium. But what is scientific methodology? Scientific methodology is based on looking at the world first. You don't make any axioms. First you look at what is happening. Then if it seems like the axiom might be that the birds fly in the direction, but we get that axiom out of the observation. We see that birds fly in clusters. So we say that, okay, maybe this is the rule that birds follow. So now this rule is like an axiom, but it comes from looking at the world, not from logic. And these are basically what we're trying to do. The flock is the reality, is the observation, and then there is a hidden reality. How does this happen? So we try to uncover this hidden reality. So you see, the Varian is following the methodology of Ptolemy. What Ptolemy says is that circular objects are perfect. This is in the Platonic world of forms and ideals, which is valid in itself. And then circles are, stars are heavenly bodies. So heavens is perfect because it's different from earth. And so perfection must follow perfection. So stars must follow perfect circular objects. Now if you observe something that's not according to that, so then what he did was, circles must be followed. So you introduce another circle upon another, so they follow two circles. But perfection cannot be. So our assumption can never be wrong. Now you try to fit the observations into and you make sure that the assumptions are correct, but the observations can be changed to match. So what Ibn al-Haytham said was that whatever Ptolemy thinks about what the stars do, this doesn't force the stars to do that. If Varian thinks that people are optimized, it doesn't force the people to optimize. They do what they want. They don't obey Varian. Stars don't obey Ptolemy. Now, so if you look at the observation, you see that the planets do not follow circular orbits, they follow elliptical orbits. So you say, okay, that's what we observe, so that's what our theory is. The theory comes from the observations, not from ideas in our head. So Euclidean geometry was the Greek science. It comes exactly, this is exactly the axioms, and this is valid. But the Euclidean geometry is valid in an ideal world which exists in the imagination. It's perfection. You have points, they are dimensionless. If you make a point on a piece of paper, it's not dimensionless. The real world is not exactly matching to the ideal world. And then you make logical deductions. So for the first, when the science first came to Europe via Spain, we got all of these libraries. In 1492, Spanish conquest was completed. Bacon was in 1500s, and they were trying to understand what science is. And so his idea about science was that you look at the patterns in observations. So this is the induction. Now, this is a good start. I mean, before this, you didn't look at the observations. You started with the axioms. So, Bacon did make a start on understanding what science is, but it's only a first step. There's many things else that need to be done in order to come to understanding of science. But the main problem with science, and the thing which has kept happening for centuries, is that science does not lead to certainty. So when you have a pattern, or basically what the Greeks said was that we should not look at the world because the world is contingent. This is a word that everything that we see, our experience, our observations, these are very particular special things. Tomorrow somebody else will come and he will see different things, and yesterday somebody else saw different things. So observations are not reliable as a route to knowledge. So even to think about using observations, that was for centuries people had fought about this theories without using observations because observations were not reliable. They changed from one day to the other day. So Ibn al-Hasam's basic contribution, science, the beginning of science, he's called the first scientist by those people who understand what's going on, is that we can use these impermanent, temporary, contingent observations which may be true today and may be false tomorrow. These are more important than universal laws which are valid for all time, from minus infinity to plus infinity, and true even if there is no human being to observe. So after Bacon put down induction, then many people started thinking, how can we get to certainty? How can we find a way to prove something from induction? And they failed because there is no such proof. But even today, they are still trying to prove how to get certainty out of induction. This is the whole philosophy of science is about. How to prove that science leads to perfect results. Science does not lead to perfect results, but they don't want to accept that. So, some time later, Descartes came around and he said that, well, no, induction doesn't work. So we go back to deduction. And he says that if we start with certainties, you end up with doubt. So what does he mean? He means that certainties are facts. These are what I can see. These are the facts, and induction starts with these facts. So he says if you start with these facts and you build a law, then you end up with doubt. Well, okay, I've seen the sun rise for 1,000 years, but is it true tomorrow? There's no certainty. So he said that method, reject this method. Instead, we start by doubting everything, which means that you reject observations. You reject what you see. You only trust your mind. So, I think, therefore I am. It means that my direct observation of my own existence, I reject that. And I reject my experience. I only rely on my brain. Now, unfortunately, brain is not very powerful. It often leads to wrong conclusions. So Newton was the first scientist in the West. Basically, he wrote optics, a book on optics, which actually Ibn al-Hasam's book on optics is widely known, and he made some extensions to it, but basically he was similarly, and he wrote in physical sciences, and again a lot of theories are there from Ibn al-Hasam, but there is no doubt that he made some very remarkable discoveries. It's not that he just copied from Ibn al-Hasam. But he himself said that I have made progress because I have stood on the shoulders of giants. So there was a lot of scientific tradition, and all of the things that he discovered had been discussed to some extent, but he put together a lot of things, and so he did make a remarkable contribution. But one thing that he did do correctly, he followed the scientific method, but one mistake that he made was he thought that his deductions were certain. He thought that his law of gravity was certain, but later on it was proved that that was not true, and Einstein showed that there were some hidden assumptions basically in what was the hidden assessment? Basically, Newton assumed that time and space are invariant, they are the same all around, and this was the basic contribution of Einstein, that time and space are relative. Time and space which exists for me is different, and time can flow differently and space can go differently. Space is actually curved. So that was a very strange thing. And this is also what shows why the axiomatic method fails in the real world, because anything that we can conceive, anything we can think, any idea is actually not true. I mean, there are lots of things that the reality does which are so complicated that we cannot imagine. You have these particle experiments, and the particle goes simultaneously through two slits. This is the unbelievable. There's one particle, but it divides and goes through both slits. How can it do that? It's only one particle, but so basically all of the success stories of science are about escaping preconceptions about the world created by axioms. And when you come to the world, you have some axioms, some ideas about how the world behaves, and if you impose these ideas on the world, then you cannot understand what is going on. And this is what the economists are doing today. That they are imposing certain ideas like optimization and equilibrium, and this makes them unable to understand what is going on in the real market. So, for example, at the time of Newton, there was this widespread belief among physicists that there can be no action at a distance, which is very logical. I mean, if I am sitting here, I cannot cause something to act far away from me. So, if the earth is sitting here and the sun is sitting here, then they cannot act upon each other. Now, the law of gravity breaks this idea. It says, and so when Newton announced this, people said that you are invoking action at a distance, and this is wrong, and you are not following the methodology of science. Exactly as today we will break the methodology of economics. So when he was able to think outside the box, you see, Ptolemy couldn't think outside the circle, so he couldn't get to the ellipse. Then this idea that space is absolute and invariant, this is a very solid intuition of ours. So to find that some observations which show that this might not be true, and then to be able to think this is a great act of genius. That shows how you can think out of the box. So quantum physics came about because they said, well, a particle doesn't even have a place. It is a probability distribution. It can be here or it can be there at the same time. So that's a very strange idea which cannot come naturally. So basically the idea that we think in natural terms and then we apply these assumptions in our mind to the world, this is always never works. You have to look at the world. And that's why Feynman, who's a recent physicist, he said that no matter how beautiful your theory, no matter how smart you are, if your theory conflicts with the observations, it's wrong. So this is giving primacy to observations. Today, economic theory is built on giving primacy to axioms. If the observations disagree with our axioms, then the observations are wrong. The theory cannot be wrong. Now, okay. So today we start with this model of housing. What will determine the rental prices? The real world is complex, as Varian says, many factors. So we try to simplify these factors. So in simplification, what one needs to do is to take away the inessential qualities, like houses have colors and different types of rooms, and but we understand that these things are not important in the decision, because we understand this because we have experienced. So when we abstract, we use our understanding of reality, direct, experienced reality, to understand what is important. The color of the house is not important. But in China, if you were, there is some number, 13 or something, I don't know. They have some Sheng Fui, some science that they study lucky numbers. So if the house has a certain number that's unlucky, then they will not rent that house. So now then, what is a characteristic which doesn't matter at all in the rental market here would be an important characteristic in China. So, I mean that these are things, this is contingent reality. There is no universal law about house number 7. But when we look at experience, then we can get to understand the real world. And if you don't use experience, then you can't understand the real world, like Varian or Manicure. So, so colors of houses, personalities of people, these don't matter very much in this rental market. If the house landlord is very strict, well, that's not really going to be the crucial factor. It's the money, how much he is charging and how much I have. These are the things which matter. And we know this from experience. It's not from any optimization, it's not any equilibrium. This is what our experience teaches us. So basically there are 3 or 4 things. Why do homeowners rent houses? So that's something they want to make money from. That's clear. So profit maximization there would be a reasonable motive to assume. Why do students want to rent houses? Well, they need it. So they are not trying to, there's no utility involved here. They need a house place to stay. So they're not going to maximize utility by houses. And then there is the process. How does the housing market work? All of these things we have to supply into the model by our intuition and by our experience. And if we don't have the intuition and experience, then we should get it.
So what is the difference between necessity and utility?
Later on I'll discuss that. So what are variance axioms? Students are trying to minimize the payment, and the owners are trying to maximize the rental payments. And then there is the process that there is some equilibrium in the market. So in equilibrium, one of the predictions of the model is that all rents will be equal, and requires identical apartments and identical students in order to get competitive equilibrium. Now, what are the predictions of variance models? That there exists an equilibrium rent. That's one of the key construction. There is a single rent for all apartments. Is this true? Can we look at the housing market? No, there is no single rent for, even if the houses are very similar, the rents are variable. So this prediction is false. So the equilibrium model doesn't work. And now why is this equilibrium rent? Well, because suppose that some house charges to more money than the equilibrium rent, then people would move out. Well, suppose that all houses are charging 1,000 rupees, and one house says that I will charge you 10% more. What will happen? Will the person move out? No, because the housing market is not that free. You can't find immediately. You'll say, okay, you might start looking, but there might be no apartment. I mean, maybe everybody is charging 1,000, but all the apartments are full. So there's nothing you can do. If there is a free apartment at the same price, and if the cost of moving is not high, then you will move. Otherwise, you will say, okay, you will complain that everybody else is, why are you charging me more? But you will pay because you have no choice. So no one can charge more because renters would move out. No one can charge less because then you would have excess demand. So suppose that I have rented the house for 800 and somebody else comes and says that I am willing to pay you 1,000. What will happen? What? No, this is what economics thinking teaches you. This is not what really happens. I have made a rental contract. Even if I haven't made a contract, I said, I'm sorry, I have promised this house to him. If you had come one day earlier, I would have given it to you, but now I have already made the deal. I have shook hands. I haven't even paid in money, but I have made the commitment, and now it's done. Next year, come back. It won't happen like that. So use your experience instead of theory. Theory is just misleading. So there are no vacancies in the Varian model, because if there is a vacant room, it will offer price less than everybody else's and everybody will move it. But are there vacancies? Of course there are vacancies. And everybody who wants, every student who wants to pay the going rate, he can find a room. Well, this is also not true. There's so all of the predictions of the Varian model are false. So economic theory tells you to think like an economist. This means close your eyes, don't look at the real world, shut down your hearts and senses. So even if I know I exist, I have to use logic and axioms to find out that I exist. Reject your own knowledge and experience of the real world as guides to the truth. So basically turn into an economic zombie, a robot, and you act according to rules without logic. You become a cripple because you have no mind, you have no brain, you have no heart, no experience. All you do is ask Varian, how does the world work? Oh, great Varian. And then Varian will tell you, and then you, whatever he says, you accept. You cannot understand the world without doing mathematics. So there is an alternative to this. Think like a human being. You are living in this world. You have a lot of experience. You have met lots of friends and lots of people, and you have know a lot of things about how housing apartment works. So use this experience to construct the model. Now actually humans have a lot of capabilities which the best computers don't have right now. For example, recognition of faces. If you have human beings and they can, in a large crowd, they can immediately pick out, oh, this is the person. And computers cannot. I mean, facial matching is still, it's much improved now than it used to be, but still. So basically all of data analysis is about pattern recognition, looking at the data and understanding something from it intuitively. All of econometrics is bogus because basically you have this data and the information is there in the picture. There is nothing else. Now in order to get information out in econometrics, you add a lot of assumptions which are false and then use these assumptions to get information, but the information that you get is a reflection of the assumptions that you made. So it doesn't really deal with the data. So that's why all of this econometrics is just junk. So we as human beings are very good processors of information. Now the first job of the economist is to think like an economist, means that pack away all of your ability to understand things by yourself. As I told you about the story of my baby, the 3-year-old can understand the hidden reality behind appearances. So you all are capable of this. Models are made to help us analyze a complex reality by simplifying it. If we don't understand the model, then the model is useless. Okay, so we are going to do. Okay, so Varian says something useful, that models cannot reflect the reality exactly. So this is actually a defense, because people often say that models are unrealistic, and certainly I am going to construct a model that's going to be unrealistic. He also constructed. So just to say that your model is unrealistic is not a criticism. But okay, so what makes a model good? What makes a model bad? Well, basically the issue that, so science, as Ibn al-Hazm said, checks the model prediction against reality. Varian, like the Greeks, checks the model against the assumptions. If the model satisfies assumptions, then it's a good model. If the model matches reality, that doesn't matter. Now in science, we take the model and we ask, does it match reality? If it matches reality, then we think that we have a good model. So when we have these assumptions about the birds, if the pattern of behavior created matches what we see, then we say, okay, we have a good model. So one of the things, the reasons why Varian's model fails to match reality is easy to see. All of the things that he assumes about the market are not true. Once you have a first of all, there is heterogeneity. Even we know intuitively that even if houses are more or less the same, there will be variations in the prices, because that's where, I mean, every day we go to the market and one store is selling tomatoes for one price and the other one is selling for a slightly different price. So we know that the prices are not the same. Even though the same product, all assumptions of competitive equilibrium hold, but our observation is that this is not enough to make the prices match. So in housing also, we often see that very similar houses, oh, this is a great bargain. The same house is renting for 12,000 over here, and he's only giving us for 8,000. Why? Nobody knows everything. I mean, the owner doesn't know, and maybe he is in a hurry to rent, and so he's reduced the price. So there are lots of factors which make prices different. So the long run equilibrium is based on certain unrealistic assumption. Everybody knows everything. So once the prices are there, then everybody knows the lowest price. So all of the people immediately rush to the lowest price house. And when he sees the rush, then instead of doing what we normally would do, we just take, oh, you arrived here first, I have offered 8,000. What does he do? He says, oh, so many people, so I can raise the price. This doesn't happen. This is what the mechanism is which would drive to equilibrium if it happened, but it doesn't happen. He says, okay, I've announced 8,000, I will rent it to the first person who comes, even though there are 50 people behind him, and one of them says, I'll offer you 10,000. I said, no, sorry, my word is 8,000, and this is the first person, so that's it. This is how the market works. So our knowledge about how the market works has to go into the model. Now, this is contingent. Now, different markets will work differently. If it's not all markets. If you have auction going on, it's entirely different situation. So, if you want to build a realistic alternative model, we should do surveys of students. What are the decisions how do you decide on renting an apartment? We should survey the homeowners to find out what is their decision-making process. Yani, this maximization assumption, this is ridiculous. We know that this doesn't work. So, neither the students are minimizing nor the students, in fact, students are not minimizing rents. They have some range of rents that they want, and they want to find a comfortable house within the range that they can afford. They're not trying to minimize rents. And similarly, homeowners are also looking at the person that is coming in, and sometimes they will, if they think that this tenant is going to be troublesome, then they will take somebody who think they will give them less trouble, if even if he has lower rent. Happens all the time. And then there's the market structure. How does the market work? And then there's the equilibrium process. What happens? So these are these 4 elements, and we will put all 4 of these elements, and I'm going to construct these models and show you how they work, and your exercise will be to make different assumptions for next time, and just follow the process that I show you and create a model which you can understand, and then study some of its implications. And by doing so, okay, I've done student behavior. Well, there is some study. There's how do people behave. It's not utility maximization. What humans do is what is called mental accounting. Students have some budget which is given to them, like the parent says, I'm going to give you 10,000 rupees. So he says, okay, in 10,000 he calculates that it will take me 3,000 rupees for food, and maybe 2,000 rupees for travel and books and other expenses, so I have 5,000 for rent. So this is then your mental accounting model says that this is your budget for rent. So now this is the maximum amount that you can pay for rent. So every student will have some number which is the maximum budget that he allows for rent. So there is this maximum number, and then within this number you're trying to find the best apartment that you can. So it's different from the idea that all apartments are the same and you're just trying to find the minimum rent. And the best apartment varies for different students because they have different characteristics. Somebody thinks that he wants a lot of space, somebody wants a beautiful house, something. So different people have different preferences. Okay, but we're not going to take care of those. Those are peripheral quantities. We can actually use models in which these things matter, but at a first shot, we just take the most basic things. So what about homeowners? Well, for homeowners we will model them. Now we are using our experience because we don't have the surveys, but these are all, this is all something which we all have a lot of experience with. So we know how people behave. Basically, when you are renting a house, there are certain costs associated with rental. So you have to cover those costs. These costs could be psychological. You don't want to have people in your house or to deal with the problems. So there is some minimum level of cost that makes it worthwhile. So then after that cost is covered, then you will take any rent above that cost. You're trying to maximize it, but you will accept anything which is above this cost. Now, so I've explained what student behavior is. I've explained what homeowner behavior is in my model. And now, what is the market structure? Well, we can say that, okay, randomly we will match the student. Every student shows up at a house. The homeowner has a minimum cost. The student has an affordability, so then they will bargain. If the student affordability is higher than the homeowner cost, then obviously rental will take place. But at what price? Now, there is the famous Nash bargaining solution. So if there are two people and they have exactly this structure, one person wants to sell at a cost and the other one wants to buy at a price. So any price between these two is acceptable to both. This is different from the equilibrium story of economics, where price is always unique in the competitive equilibrium. So there is no room for negotiation. This is completely unrealistic and wrong assumption about the reality, which we all know from experience. But you have been trained like an economist, so you shut your minds and you shut your eyes and you shut your experience and just think about math in order to solve. So in reality, we know that there is a large margin. So now, what will the price be? Well, the Nash bargaining solution comes to the midpoint as the solution, obviously, because if you don't make any assumptions about who is this person and who is that person and what they know, then the only symmetric solution is the midpoint. There is nothing else. But midpoint is not a sensible solution. It depends on a lot of factors. So this actually depends on market structure. Now, the way that the market structure works, we know, is that the landlord doesn't get to bargain. He has to announce the price in advance. He has an advertisement and he puts down that this is what I want. Then he can actually bargain. Yes, okay, looking at you, I will give you a lower rate. But let's take this out of the picture for simplicity. Normally, this will not happen. Normally, what happens in serious markets is that the homeowner puts down a price, and then there is a real estate agent. So real estate agent will so you don't directly negotiate. So there is no bargaining. It just says this is the house, and he is asking this much for it. Can you afford it? That's fine. In some cases, if you really like the house and it's a little bit higher, then you can say, okay, please ask him if he will sell this. But okay, so this is secondary and unimportant complication. This is what I said about in creating a model. This is not if this was happening all the time, then we would say, okay, this is a serious part of the model. But this is not. This is a peripheral quality, and actually we don't need to worry about it. So market structure is that there is no negotiation. How homeowner announces a price. This is different from and actually. And the student is more flexible. He can look at lots of houses. The homeowner just gets to wait to see who shows up. So this is actually the reality that we are going to use in creating our model. What about equilibrium? Well, so I have given you now 3 elements of the model. I want you to make this model, but first we are going to make one together. But you are going to make another one with different assumptions, just to understand how modeling works. So now equilibrium is also important. In the first shot, there will be some outcome. Students will go into some houses. Some houses will become empty. Some houses will be vacant. So now what happens next? This is what equilibrium is about. That okay, in the market, what we will the market I will study will have 16 students and 20 houses. So 4 will always be vacant. So now what will the vacant houses do, and how will the students behave? Will they move to the vacant apartment? All of these. This is what the equilibrium is about. Now, in the Varian model, in this situation, if you have 16 houses, and let's suppose the costs are 0, the only thing that the owner makes is the rent, then the price will go to 0, because the vacant houses will all advertise for smaller prices because they are vacant, and so the students will move, and then new houses will become vacant and they'll make their prices smaller. But you know that this is not realistic. This is not what will happen. The price will go to 0 actually, but this is not going to happen. And eventually the price will be so small that they will say, okay, let it remain vacant. And even if all the houses are rented at 1,000 and somebody is advertising an empty house for 100, it may be that nobody will move. That okay, we have moved our things and we are settled and we have friends, and so now yes, it will save me 900 rupees, but I have my budget I can afford. So what I'm going to do with 900 rupees extra? This is how reality works, not how economists work. Economists are maximizing money, but we have seen that humans have a lot of other motivations other than money. Money making is not the only purpose of life, contrary to what you have been told. So there are different situations actually, and so there are different situations which arise in the model. What is the configuration of rents? What is the configuration of student budgets? And how is the market structured? And how does the equilibrium process take place? Now, one easy result will be that we will have heterogeneity. Every apartment will rent for different price, and this will be part of the model. And then we will see what happens if you put a tax. All of these things which you do in model you can see, but since this model is constructed out of elements of your experience, you will be able to understand what happens instead of just calculating differential equations to find out. Because this is the object of model. Models are in the mind of the modeler. This is very important. Models are not differential equations, mathematics on pieces of paper. Models are used to understand a complex reality. If you don't understand the model, then the model is worse than useless, because you can understand the reality easier than you can understand the model. And the object of the model was to help us understand the reality. So if it prevents us from understanding reality, it's doing the opposite of what it is supposed to do. Create this model. First, you see, I was going to use NetLogo to create this, because but NetLogo would have hidden some of the elements of the model. So I'm going to instead do the model one step at a time, and then basically you see, and I'll show how we do the model, and then we can create this model using a programming language if we want to run this for a long time. I'm going to do every step by hand, so just like we do calculations by hand. So okay, so we have these students. Now what we want to do is to give them a maximum affordable rent. Now, as I said, the mental accounting models which we have found for human behavior show that instead of maximizing has one budget constraint, one money, and then you allocate. But people don't do that. People have separate heads. Okay, my budget for housing is this much, my budget for food, and then you don't use the budget for rent to borrow into food. And this is different from so you have multiple budget constraints in multiple areas. This is not optimal, but this is how people work. So now the first thing we want to do is affordable rent. What is the maximum rent that these students want to pay? So in the model we can just put this down at random. So what should I do? We can show it rand between. So I have chosen my own students as the. Okay, so what's realistic rents that you can pay in your budget? What is the range going to be? 4 to 10 thousands, eh? Okay, so we can say 4 to 10, 4 to 6. 4 to 10 is fine. 40 to 100. So I'm measuring this in hundreds of rupees. So 40 is 4,000, and so Sidra has a budget of 4,100 rupees for her, and this is the maximum that she can afford to pay for the rent. So I've just used random numbers. So because every time it recomputes, so Sidra now has a budget of 7,400, Sabila has 8,200, Sarmaila has 5,400 budget. These are the budgets of the students. So what we are going to do, because I don't want this to keep recomputing, is I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste this right in the same place as a value. So now it won't change. Now, for the rental, I can do a two-step procedure, and I would like you to do a two-step procedure in your model, but I'm going to do one step. A two-step procedure works like this. I put down, let's see how much time we have. Yes, short. So I'm not going to do the two-step. So you put down a cost, and then you put down a markup. This is actually how people work. I mean, you have a cost. This is my cost that I'm at least 2,000 rupees a month it cost me to maintain the apartment, and I want to have some profit. And different people have different margins, so it can be 20% or 30% or 10%. So you, if I was going to do a more realistic model, I would say, okay, I have a cost, and then I have a markup. Everyone will have different markup. Different people have different. And then I apply the markup to the cost to get the minimal accepted price. But now I'm going to pack all of these steps into one, and I'm going to ask for a rent. And now I have 20 apartments, and the rents, what I will do is I will say this is rand between okay, what's the cheapest apartments? Let's say make it 30. Oops, you D130, ne? 30 to 80. So I want to 8,000 is the most expensive apartment here. Now I'm going to have 20 apartments, so I will extend this. So there are 4 vacant apartments here. Now first I'm going to get rid of the fluctuations by, this is now random numbers and they fluctuate. I'm going to fix them by copying this and paste the values. Okay, so now there are these apartments and there are these students. Now the first thing to do is to ask about market structure. Actually I asked my programmer to create a model like this, in which the students walk around and they search for the apartment. And so you go to an apartment and you have your affordability criteria and you have the apartment. But you can still say that, okay, lots of apartments are empty, I can search for another one. So in NetLogo you can program this, and he has actually done it. But I'm going to just use this. So now we can just imagine that this is the first situation. Just to simplify life, I will imagine that this is the situation. Sidra walked into this apartment which is renting for 71. We don't need to identify the houses because we can identify them by their rental value. Although I could put names on them, but it's not necessary. So Sidra walked into this apartment. What happened? Let's look at the outcome. Her budget was 74 and this person was asking 7,100. so he will rent it for 7,100, right? This apartment got rented, right? Now Sabila walked into and he was asking 44, so he got rented for 44. Sarmaila got in for 38. This is also goes through 59, but this one does not. Rumina did not had budget of 63, and the apartment owner was asking 7,000. So this is currently there is no outcome here. No outcome. Aisha also failed to find a house. Adil succeeded. Sheikh got in at 53. Iqbal did not succeed in finding a house. Fawzia did not succeed. Hassam, what happened to Hassam? Yes, he rented this apartment. No, Mariam did not succeed. 36, yes. Maz, yes, he rented the house for 32. Sumeria, yes, maybe we are not allowing negotiations. So, but yes, this one might be negotiated, but 42. Okay. So now, this is the first round outcome. Everyone went to a house at random, and if they're matched, so notice how this is so much different. Now, at the first round, it's finished now. The apartments that are rented. They're not going to re-equilibrate. The Walrasian equilibrium which comes about happens when you have renegotiation. You see, what happens in renegotiation is that Sidra goes to sees, Sabila's house is renting for 44, so she goes to that house and she says, look, I'm willing, I'm paying 71, why don't you rent it to me? I will pay you 45. Now then, what will Sabila do? She will kill Sidra. Why are you doing this to me? You have your
I don't want to take laws in my hand.
So, this is not how the market works. And this is how the equilibrium. So, why we believe in this imaginary equilibrium when we know reality? Because we have learned to think like economists, which means close your eyes to reality and say supply equals demand. Now, supply didn't equal demand. Here we have a situation where there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 apartments which are vacant, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students who have not found houses. Now what we will do is we can go to second round. Now Rumina looks around to see, is there another apartment? Yes, the next one is available. So Rumina goes into this one. So we can put her here. And okay, so what we do, एक कॉलम और बना देते हैं. No, wait, let's see. I'm going to do is to copy all of this over. Now, so I'm going. This is the original configuration. Now we are working on the second round of what happens. Now, actually, what it will be useful to do is to arrange. You see, there are different kinds of assumptions now as to what happens. For example, Rumina could just look at all possible apartments and look for the best, or she could walk to the nearest apartment. So I was using the nearest apartment, which is what would happen in a net logo model, because you would just walk to the next apartment. And so you may not find out if there is an even better apartment. And this is what's realistic. But it doesn't matter for our model. We can do it either way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to sort this thing by the rental value. What this will do is it will help us to see what is happening. Okay, so I'm going to sort by rent and from largest to smallest. Okay, smallest to largest is fine too. Okay, so here it is. This is the result. The notice that this 39 is a very cheap, perhaps a very cheap apartment, but it is not rented, vacant. This is cheap apartment, not vacant. So it's not according to what the economics theory tells you. This is not how it happens in the real world either. Sometimes okay, so now let's look at those people who don't have apartments. Yeah, these are okay. The first one after this rearrangement is Aisha, because she could only afford 55, and the apartment she had is 59. So since in this list she is first, so we will give her the first chance. So she tries to go this one to vacant, but this is still higher than what she can afford. But 39 she can take. So we can move her here. And so Aisha comes up here. She is student number 6. क्या हुआ? नहीं, this time actually, I said there is no option. This is the only apartment that's available. And पसंद नहीं आया तो क्या घर वापस चली जाओगी? There's no other apartments available. This is the only one that is available at her budget. So 55 and 39. Okay, so we remove Aisha from here. Okay, now it's Mariam's turn. Now Mariam is in trouble because Aisha got the last cheap apartment and the other apartments are 59 and 62, and she cannot rent either of those because her budget does not allow it. So we will take her out of the market. This is the one that the Varian is sending to the outer ring. So okay, Mariam goes to the outer ring. Notice that Mariam is not the one with the cheapest demand that is getting crowded out of the market. Her 57, there were lots of apartments available for 57, but she didn't find. So this is again a prediction of the economic theory, which is wrong. That if you can afford more than the equilibrium rent, then you will find a house. This is not true. You can. Now what about Sumaira? Sumaira can afford, and we can put her in any of these 4 apartments. Which one of them should we put her in? Well, you see, that's what economic theory says, that she finds the best. If she has knowledge of all of the apartments, and so we can put her in the best, in the best, but she need not. She might be any one of these 4. It depends on which one she finds first in her search. Let me put her at 62. So we leave one open just to show that the cheapest apartment may remain vacant. Now what about Rumina? Rumina can still find an apartment at 62 or at 59. It is true that the cheaper apartments are more likely to get rented. पता नहीं क्या होगी ये? Oh अच्छा, नहीं हम sheet 2 ही पे हैं. अच्छा ये बहुत एंड पे आ गया. कंट्रोल, ये कंट्रोल से हो गया. सही है. सही है. Okay. So where should we put Rumina? Well, it is true that the cheaper apartments are more likely, probabilistically, to get rented than the more expensive ones, but it's not a sure shot. Internet, can you find out all the empty houses in? That's why. See, okay. I will put her in the cheapest apartment. So now she has 4,000 extra budget for rent. And so now Fazia is out of the market. There is no apartment available at this price that she can afford. What about Sidra? Oh, Sidra is already rented, no problem. Iqbal has no apartment. So 53, and he is also not able to afford any of the remaining apartments. So he is out of the market. So at the end of round 1, we have these students have matched, and they have 59, 62. Sidra was unlucky, she got a very high price. And then there are these apartments which are less value than what Sidra is paying are vacant. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vacant apartments, and 3 students who have no rentals. Now, what will happen next? This is the issue. That's what equilibrium. And again, this again depends on the nature of the contract. I mean, if you have monthly contracts and students move, it depends on the market actually. If the students are, once they are settled for the semester, so we can say that okay, maybe sometimes people sign for a semester, so then they have no option. So we can say that okay, one semester passes like this. Now what will happen next semester? Now we can think about the equilibrium. That is the equilibrium. So equilibrium is not useless. There is a driving force towards equilibrium, but it works with its own. There is something which drives towards equilibrium. All of these empty apartments will say that we should reduce our rents, maybe. No. Now the way that I have set it up, the cost, these are the costs, so there is no margin. If there was a margin, then the owner might think about reducing margin. But the way in this market, I am saying that the student, this is the minimum that you can afford to rent at. So these people, they don't want to rent. Now interestingly enough, there are students who can pay this price, but so now the what will happen in next is that Sidra will move to a cheaper apartment, and according to us, so this is first round equilibrium. Second round equilibrium, and this is what happened at the end of the first, on the move-in day. The first set of moves, you failed to match the first house, so you looked for another one and you found. So this is what happened. Now 1 year passes. Everybody is the second academic year, and suppose things are stable, budgets are the same, which may change actually. But just to simplify life, now Sidra will think according to the model, according to the economic theory model, Sidra will move to the 62, but it may not be. Sidra may be quite comfortable at the apartment that she is in, and she says, okay, yes, I am paying a little bit more, but it is within my budget, and I am comfortable here, and I have gotten used to this place, and so I won't move. So then there will be nothing, even though there's a vacant apartment less, because this is not the sole concern of life to make money. So so this is an equilibrium now. Equilibrium, there's nothing to do. These 3 students went back to their villages because they could not afford to live in the city.
Or may they negotiate with their parents?
Yes. All of these things can happen. They can also move into some other students that as a second person. So all of these things are possible. Now, let us think about the equilibrium model. Yes, that's the next thing. So now I want to show how the Varian model works. So this is our result. There is a range of rents. This is exactly matching with reality, matching with our intuition, matching with our understanding. But now let's see how economists think about this. How did Varian get to the equilibrium rent? So what is his reasoning? So let's take this, because as I've said, if you don't have a match between supply and demand, then you can never have equilibrium. If there's more students, then there's no equilibrium. If there's less students, now according to the Varian model, very strange things happen. So let's take a situation where the Varian model has a chance of working. Now we reproduce this, and now we ask, how does it? This is only the students who found the apartment.
So
हाँ अच्छा हाँ सिद्रा भी है इसमें, सही है सही है सही है. Okay. So now, according to these houses are identical according to the theory. So that's fine. It means that and people want to minimize rent. So now what will happen is that here this is the cheapest apartment. So now now basically what we do in the Walrasian world is something which is called recontracting. Suddenly all of the contracts become null and void, and we start from scratch. So we go into this imaginary world where everybody moves out, and now we see that okay, this house which has rented for 32 sees that I am the smallest minimum, and everybody has full knowledge of everything. So all of the students suddenly arrive at the door of this house, and they say, we want to rent your house. So he says that I have this great profit opportunity, so I'll increase the rent. So he increases the rent, and he keeps on increasing until there's only one person left at the door. So let's see about that. It's called there is a function. We want to assess what is the demand at this value. So count if I want to look at the max. Yeah, right, exactly. I want to look at the student offers. This is okay. So, oops. Okay, so this is count if O2 to O14, these are the student offers, are bigger than what I am asking for, and actually I want greater than or equal to here. Okay, now I can check it off. So at this value, at the rent 32, all of the students are demanding. So the demand is 13, and at 32 supply is 1. Now I'm doing the demand supply calculations of Varian. Now what I'm going to do is to change this to dollars so that the student list doesn't change. Okay, so this remains 13, but now when I copy it down, okay, so up until 44 rent, 44 is the mass affordability, the smallest. So there is a full demand of 13. So everybody can move their rent up to 44 without losing any neighbor, any renter. But after 44, if you move up, then mass goes out of the market. At 50 there are so at 50 what we have is we have 7 apartments and 12 students who are demanding, right? You understanding this?
Yes.
No. Okay, at 53 you have 8 apartments and 11 students demanding, so it's still excess. I mean, this price is still one at which you have excess demand for apartments. At 59 you have 9 apartments and
9 the demand would be 4 apartments.
No. When the price is 59, then the number of apartments is 9, and also the supply is also 9. But actually at this point the supply includes the next 2 apartments also. So what I am going to do to prevent this from happening, just to make life easier, is to make this 60, 61, 61, So now the equilibrium price is 59. At 59 price, there are 9 apartments which are available. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And there are 9 students which are willing to rent. And at 60 also there are 9 students which are willing to rent, but there are 10 apartments. Actually, I need to increase this sufficiently so that this becomes 8, so as to get a unique equilibrium. I want to just show what happens with this. So I'm trying to get the Varian equilibrium. So I'm going to increase this number to what is the next. 63 is when Misbah drops out of the market, I think. So if I make this 64, then we will be fine. Yeah. Now we have I've changed the number just to get a unique equilibrium. Otherwise, I could explain things, but it would be a little bit more complicated. So I want to keep things simple for this round. So now we have a unique equilibrium. If the price is 59, then there are 9 apartments which are available. So here's the supply curve which is going up, and at 9 it intersects, and there's demand curve which is going down. 59 is the equilibrium price. At 59 we will have 9 apartments which are available, and 9 apartments which will 9 students who are willing to rent. At a higher price than 59, suppose we go up to 60, then the number of students drops down, and the number of apartments, I mean, you have more apartments available and fewer students who are willing to rent. So as soon as the number of apartments becomes greater, then the equilibrium breaks down, because the vacant apartment offers a lower price. And similarly, so the theory says that now what Varian says is that what will happen is that this is the Varian equilibrium outcome. According to the countif function, this is what's telling me. यानी मैंने इसको काउंट किया है. काउंटिफ में ये किया है कि what is the number greater than or equal to 59.
59 तो रेंट है ना.
हाँ, तो ये देखो, 1 ये नहीं अफोर्ड कर सकता है, 2 3 ये नहीं अफोर्ड कर सकते हैं,
ऊपर वाले
हाँ 4 नहीं अफोर्ड कर सकते हैं. तो टोटल 13 स्टूडेंट्स हैं, उसमें से 4 नहीं अफोर्ड कर सकते हैं, तो 9 स्टूडेंट बच गए. तो अब क्या होगा कि you see what will happen is that in the Wahlerazian equilibrium, all the apartments will offer to rent, all of the apartments which can, you see, at the 59 the top 4 apartments drop out of the market because their minimum cost is below. So I think 60 पे भी equilibrium आ जाएगा. So if everyone offers 60, then 60 प्राइस पे शगुफ्ता ले लेगी, सरमाइला नहीं लेगी, आयशा भी नहीं लेगी, हसीन भी नहीं लेगा, सबीला ले लेगी 60, अदील भी ले लेगा 60, शेख भी ले लेगा 60, मिसबा भी ले लेगी.
स्टूडेंट नंबर 5 की मैक्सिमम विलिंगनेस टू रेंट है 63.
स्टूडेंट नंबर हाँ वो मैं जा रहा हूँ ना, आ रहा हूँ अभी. ओ अच्छा, हाँ अच्छा, ये मैंने उसको वो कर दिया ना, चेंज कर दिया, ठीक है, डजंट मैटर, इसको 63 कर दें तो that doesn't matter. नहीं, at 60 equilibrium this will not matter because the equilibrium is 60. तो Hassan will take 60, Rumina will take at 60, and sorry ये नहीं होगा, हाँ क्या ठीक है, एवरीथिंग इज फाइन. ये अच्छा, बात ये है कि अब प्राइस 60 है. शगुफ्ता विल गेट ऑफ ऑल द अपार्टमेंट्स एक्सेप्ट, यानी फर्स्ट 9 अपार्टमेंट्स जो है ना, दे आर अवेलेबल एंड ऑल ऑफ देम आर फॉर 60. क्योंकि जो भी एम्प्टी अपार्टमेंट है ना, जो यानी 32 वाला था, उसने अपना रेंट बढ़ाना शुरू किया अनटिल एक ही उसके आदमी दरवाजे पे रह गया. फिर वो सब लोग 36 वाले पे चले गए, उसने भी अपना रेंट बढ़ाना शुरू कर दिया, जब तक कि उसके दरवाजे पे एक रह गया, वो 60 पे पहुंचेगा. इसी तरह से सब अब और इस तरह की प्रोसेस फॉलो करेंगे. तो द वन प्राइस एट विच दे विल बी एग्जैक्टली 9, ऑल ऑफ द अपार्टमेंट्स विल बी रेंटेड एंड दे विल बी एग्जैक्टली 9 स्टूडेंट्स विद 9 अपार्टमेंट्स. तो इसमें फिर ये मार्ज जो है ये आउट ऑफ मार्केट हो गया, क्योंकि एट 60 ही कैन नॉट अफोर्ड. सरमाइला इज आउट ऑफ मार्केट, आयशा इज आउट ऑफ मार्केट, हसीन इज आउट ऑफ मार्केट, बाकी एवरीबडी इज इन द मार्केट. तो ये 4 स्टूडेंट्स उड़ गए और ये 4 अपार्टमेंट्स उड़ गए. एंड दिस इज सपोज टू बी द एफिशिएंट इक्विलिब्रियम. What is right about this? Yani this is the competitive market equilibrium. Why not let it be like this? अब वो yani there is a logic. According to the Varian, this is the efficient outcome. This is the best possible outcome because we have market efficiency. But it is not. इसमें 4 घर हैं जो खाली पड़े हैं, 4 स्टूडेंट्स हैं जिनको कुछ नहीं मिला है. And this is exactly what will always happen in supplied equilibrium. Acha, suppose that we go to a social equilibrium. We go back to the first and we say कि let us try to, ये देखो अब हम लोग कमांड इकोनॉमी पे जा रहे हैं कि ये हमारे पास, हम लोग दफ्तर में बैठे हैं, हॉस्टल घर वाले आ गए, उन्होंने कहा कि दिस इज आवर हाउस एंड दिस इज व्हाट वी आर विलिंग टू रेंट. स्टूडेंट्स ने हमें अपना बतलाया है बजट आके. अब हम कह रहे हैं कि हम मैच करते हैं इंस्टेड ऑफ लेटिंग द मार्केट. तो व्हाट वी विल डू, वी विल अरेंज बोथ द स्टूडेंट्स. ठीक है, हम इसको फिर एक और जगह पे कॉपी कर लेते हैं एंड टू शो यू हाउ इट वर्क्स. वो आउटकम हमें नहीं चाहिए. So you see, now you know more about supply and demand than Varian or Manichev, because they don't understand the reality of how the housing market, because they never looked at the rental market. They looked only at equilibrium and optimization. And this is not the way the market works.
सर आपने जो लास्ट इक्विलिब्रियम निकाला है वेरिएंट का,
हाँ,
पॉइंट ये भी है कि 1 साल के बाद जो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट नेगोशिएट हुए हैं तो डिपार्टमेंट्स को आउट ऑफ मार्केट हो गए.
क्या हुआ?
वेकेंट हो गए डिपार्टमेंट 4 पर.
हाँ,
लेकिन जो दोबारा अगले साल दोबारा वो नेगोशिएशन होगी तो डिपार्टमेंट्स कम होते जाएंगे इस तरह से, मतलब अकॉर्डिंग टू वेरिएंट.
नहीं समझ में आया मुझे.
मतलब विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम जब हर ईयर जब भी नेगोशिएशन होगी तो नंबर ऑफ वेकेंट डिपार्टमेंट इंक्रीज होते जाएंगे.
क्यों?
अफोर्डेबिलिटी भी बढ़ सकती है,
नए लोग आएंगे, नए अपार्टमेंट्स आएंगे, एवरीथिंग चेंजेस. स्टूडेंट्स मूव आउट कर जाएंगे, कुछ ग्रेजुएट कर जाएंगे, एवरीथिंग चेंजेस. अच्छा, मैंने अब स्टूडेंट्स को अरेंज कर दिया बाय देयर रेंट, और फिर मैंने अब ना आई एम सिटिंग इन द कमांड सेंटर, आई एम डूइंग ए कमांड इकोनॉमी व्हिच इज सपोज्ड टू बी सो बैड. एंड मैंने हाउसेस को भी सॉर्ट कर दिया फ्रॉम चीपेस्ट टू मोस्ट एक्सपेंसिव स्टूडेंट्स को भी सॉर्ट कर दिया. अब what we see is that every student can find a house. तो fine, so what I do is okay, हर student को उसके matching house दे दिया, and we came up with a command economy outcome in which every student has a house, every renter has his minimum affordable cost, and everybody is happy. As opposed to market में ये होता कि 3 लोग तो अपने घर चले गए स्टूडेंट छोड़ के, स्कूल छोड़ के, क्योंकि वो तो city was too expensive for them to afford it. So that was the efficient outcome, and this outcome is less efficient. Why? कोई बता सकता है? Actually, there is a reason. You see, what the Varian assumes is that there is no difference between necessity and, अब ये वो बात है जो question पूछा था, needs and wants. अगर ये कोई ऐसी कमोडिटी है जो कि अननेसेसरी है, कोई खूबसूरत जोड़ा है जो किसी को नज़र आ गया, पसंद आ गया, तो उसमें डिमांड एंड सप्लाई इक्विलिब्रियम, उसमें भी फिर प्रॉब्लम ये होता है कि उसमें फिर वो यूटिलिटी उतनी स्ट्रांग नहीं होती उसमें, यानी लिया तो भी नहीं फ़ायदा, नहीं लिया तो भी नहीं फ़ायदा. तो मगर जहाँ नेसेसिटी है तो वहाँ पे यानी बीइंग हैविंग अ हाउस इज़ अ रिक्वायरमेंट, you have to have it. तो इसमें जो actually you see what is the argument? The argument is that at equilibrium the consumer surplus is maximized, and if you look at the total profits being made by the landlords, what is the profit? Profit is amount they are getting over the cost, and the total profits made by the students, which is profit क्या है उसकी affordability से वो कितना कम दे रहे हैं. तो ये दोनों profits को अगर sum कर दो तो competitive equilibrium will have the largest. So in some sense it is the most money making situation for all parties concerned. So that is the property of competitive equilibrium. But is this a sensible property for the real world? No, this is not what we want. When we are looking to find housing, then we want to make sure that everybody gets housing, not that everybody is making the maximum profits. If you can afford it, and by putting you in a expensive apartment, देखो सबीला जो है वो, यानी चलो हसन जो है वो उसकी हाईएस्ट 96 है, तो he can certainly find equilibrium में 60 में he will be making more profits. But since he can afford it, I would like to put him into a more expensive house, ताकि जो सस्ते houses हैं वो they should be available to cheaper students who cannot afford. This is the principle of justice. This is not the principle of the market. So the market does not produce good outcomes. In fact, what we see in the world is a result of this market, that the people are poor and they are not able to afford because we are following the market laws, but we don't have to follow the market laws. Who told us except Varian? So we say if we close our eyes and obey Varian, then we will come to this silly results.
Most of the theories, policy applications are derived based on these demand and supply principles.
Yes.
So
it is all wrong. It is all completely wrong. Yes, we just
kind of
exactly all of this trade. These are all wrong. All of this wrong.
Like this.
I showed you in last lecture this labor market mein the studies show that if you raise the minimum wage, it increases the employment. Here also, if we have margins and if some students are dropping out, and if we put a rent ceiling, then people will find housing and everybody will be better off. So according to the theory, if you put a rent ceiling, it will make people leave the market. I mean, rent ceiling can never help, but it can hurt. But in this model we can see easily that if you put a rent ceiling, it might prevent the high demand of some of the houses and it will cause more housing. Exactly like that, if you increase the minimum wage, you get more people hired. So the policy implications are all different. So now I am going to just describe to you the assignment, that this is the same assignment but you have different configurations. Start with the configuration with more apartments, less apartments, allow for the possibility of multiple rooms. So create a model of your own in which you have student demand. Student demand can be different from the model. What do the homeowners want, and what is the market mechanism? You can allow for negotiation, that okay, everybody goes and they negotiate, and so there are 4 things in your model. One is student behavior. If the student doesn't find an apartment, maybe he wants to become a roommate. So some people can be roommate types, and some people are very strictly Unitarian. They want a single room to themselves. So maybe they can have prices differences. Try to keep the model simple, but so one is the student behavior. The other part is the landlord behavior. What do the landlord trying to get? Then there is the market structure, and then there is the equilibrium movement. Yani once everybody is settled, then how do people adjust prices, and how do students move?
So what about the geography and spatial?
Geography and spatial, that is in net logo. I haven't done it in here. If you want to, you can do it, but it's going to be difficult to handle in Excel. It's easy to handle in net logo, but I didn't, and that's what I wanted to teach net logo for. But in net logo, there's other problems. You don't see what's happening every step. So, and also you would have been confused with the programming. So, I decided to do it in a transparent way. So, you got the assignment?
Yes.
Okay. So now you will do something which Varian doesn't know how to do. To construct a realistic model of the housing. Most economists, yes. No.